Hey y'all, it's Celt, and let's continue our talk about predicting civil wars. So in the last video I put out, I talked about the fact that there's multiple characteristics we use when predicting a civil war, but the main three are anocracies, entrepreneurship, and dissemination. And in that video I talked about anocracies, the hybrid form of government that's not a democracy and it's not fully authoritarian. We also talked about the Pauliday Index or Pauliday score, which is used to rate where a government stands on that. You should definitely watch that video if you're going to follow through with watching this entire series, because it all does kind of work together. But now in this video, we need to talk about entrepreneurship and how that plays into our role as predicting a civil war and plays into its role of igniting a civil war. So when we talk about entrepreneurship within the realm of global politics, civil war, or violence, we're not talking about a business owner. We're talking about a different type of entrepreneur. The type of entrepreneurs we're talking about are not attempting to sell you an iPhone. They are attempting to sell you a rhetoric. One of the reasons the term works so well is just like a business entrepreneur, they are capitalizing off a situation. In the Anocracies video, we talk about how as you're moving through that Pauliday score, groups are losing or gaining power, and that's creating a power dynamic issue. It's creating a power vacuum. This is what those entrepreneurs that we're talking about capitalize off of. They are capitalizing off that power dynamic shift or that power vacuum to establish control by selling you their rhetoric. There are multiple types of entrepreneurs during this entire process, but the most important ones that we need to talk about are the ethnic entrepreneurs and the violence entrepreneurs. And spoiler, sometimes one entrepreneur during this entire process fits into both of those categories. An ethnic entrepreneur is someone who puts out their rhetoric based on ethnic or racial lines. The reason they pick those lines are those are usually the most polarizing and cause most people to act. These type of entrepreneurs like to sell what I refer to as a pie rhetoric. This idea that civil rights and equality are like a pie. The more groups that are taking a slice from it, eventually it runs out. Their entire message is that another group of people getting equal rights actually takes away rights from that initial group of people. If you want actual examples of this, think of the rhetoric coming out during the civil rights movement and the Jim Crow era. The entire rhetoric spoken during that time was that if black people got equal rights, it was going to cause issues for white people. The entire point of this rhetoric is to create an us versus them mentality, pushing the blame of the problems of one group onto the responsibility of another group. And this type of rhetoric works, especially among racial and ethnic lines, because racial and ethnic lines are an easy way to visually compartmentalize different groups of people. You can easily convince someone that since they don't look like you, they're not like you. The next type of entrepreneur we need to cover is the violence entrepreneur. Their rhetoric is not necessarily centered around the problem, but the solution, as they call it. And that solution to them is violence. Violence entrepreneurs push more of a rhetoric that a preemptive strike is necessary to prevent whatever future problem or current ongoing problem that their group is experiencing. You want an example of this? Think the Proud Boys on January 6th and their insurrection storming the Capitol. The Proud Boys' rhetoric centered around a small amount of pushing out the idea that the election was stolen, but the bigger message was that the solution was violence and a revolution. They had to storm the Capitol to take back their country. Violence entrepreneurs like to piggyback on the rhetoric of other types of entrepreneurs. They prefer to let the ethnic or racial entrepreneurs or other types of entrepreneurs establish the us versus them problem. Violence entrepreneurs like to swoop in and take over, establishing their solution for the problem: violence. Even then, violence entrepreneurs don't have to actually outright call for violence. Even though that is the most common MO, they can normally just take an audience that's been whipped up by other type of entrepreneurs, the ethnic or racial entrepreneurs, and point them at a target that they know that that mob is on the verge of violence. This could be called the Libs of TikTok strategy. It could also be called the Donald Trump strategy. Libs of TikTok never actually calls for bomb threats to schools that are promoting LGBTQIA plus equality or racial equality. But they know their audience. They know their audience has already been worked up. And if they point their audience at that target, violence will ensue. Libs of TikTok would be considered a violence entrepreneur. People like Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Charlie Kirk, all of them would be considered racial or ethnic entrepreneurs. If you follow the content that people like Charlie Kirk, Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh are putting out, you can see how this works in tandem with the information put out by Libs of TikTok to further create the divide and push for violence. But then you have people like Donald Trump, who are both. Trump would be classified as both a violence entrepreneur and an ethnic/racial entrepreneur. The anti-Semitic rhetoric surrounding Trump about the deep state, his comments about how immigrants aren't sending their best, and his push that the election was stolen by those evil Democrats are examples of Trump working as an ethnic or racial entrepreneur. While Trump has never come out screaming white power, his entire rhetoric was pushing that white people were getting the short end of the deal and that things were being taken away by white people from the deep state and immigrants. We see him working in the violence entrepreneur rhetoric when he makes the offers of paying the legal defense bills of whoever attacked a protester, or his words on January 6th in which he stated that people needed to fight like hell. Now that you know what we mean when we say entrepreneurship, you need to know how we use this to predict civil wars. And the answer to that is very simple. We tracked who they are and what they're saying. Tracking who are the entrepreneurs, we can track and see what factions are going to form, what factions have formed, and what their beliefs are. No matter the country, no matter the holiday score, you are going to have these entrepreneurs within a country. The issue is when you get to a certain level of these entrepreneurs. The more of these entrepreneurs you have that are building a sizable or successful following tells us there's discontent within a population. So by tracking the entrepreneurs, we can track things like discontent that may not show up in other research methods such as surveying. We can also use them to track the factions that are forming and their belief systems. Their belief systems giving us key insight into things such as trigger points. The trigger point being an event, a rhetoric, or a command that would cause one of these factions to go off and take action. So when it comes to these entrepreneurs, we take in every single thing they put out. We watch every video, we read every tweet, we listen to every podcast so that we can accurately predict the rhetoric that they are going to put out in the future and the risk of civil war or conflict and violence. So if this is a subject that you would like to study more of, or a job field that you feel that you would like to get into, be sure to find a good therapist. Trust me, you'll need it. But as always, stay vigilant, stay safe. I love you all. Until next time.